My fiancé's family made me sign a one-sided prenup, so I canceled the wedding, took the honeymoon solo, and posted every photo with a different woman. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I believed love was about trust and partnership. I grew up in a simple, working-class family where relationships were built on small gestures, sharing meals, honest words, and weathering hard days together. So when I met Claire, everything about her felt like something out of a dream. She was elegant, wrapped in kindness, confident, funny, and the kind of woman who made a crowded room fade when she smiled at you. We met at a charity gala that my company sponsored. I was only there because my boss wanted someone relatable to represent the firm. But when Claire approached me, this woman in a soft blue dress with eyes full of calm curiosity, it felt like the universe had decided to change my luck. We talked for hours about things that actually mattered: ambition, family, our love for quiet mornings, and strong coffee. She laughed when I admitted I still watched old sitcoms to unwind. And she said, "You're the first real person I've met here." The next few months felt like something out of a movie. Weekend hikes, late-night talks, spontaneous road trips where we sang off-key to every song. I thought I'd found someone who didn't care about my background or the size of my paycheck. She always said, "Money doesn't buy loyalty or peace, and I just want both." I believed her. Then came the family dinners. Her parents were polite at first, but their compliments carried barbs. "You've done well for yourself considering where you started." Claire's always had a generous heart. Her father once asked what my exit strategy was for my career like. My life was an investment plan. I laughed it off, telling myself they'd warm up eventually. Claire would squeeze my hand under the table, whispering, "Don't mind them, they're just old-fashioned." Still, something in me stirred uneasily. A faint voice saying, "They're not joking." But I pushed it aside. I was in love, and love was supposed to overcome everything, wasn't it? And I had no idea how much that belief would cost me. The night I proposed to Claire, everything felt perfect. I'd spent weeks planning at candles along the pier, where we'd had our first date, a quiet dinner, her favorite wine. When I got down on one knee, her eyes filled with tears before I could even finish my speech, she said yes, and for that moment, I swear I felt like the luckiest man alive. The following weeks were a blur of excitement. Her family insisted on hosting an engagement dinner at their estate, a sprawling property that made me feel like I'd stepped into another world. They spared no expense. Silver place settings, imported champagne, a string quartet in the corner. Everyone congratulated me, but their compliments sounded more like evaluations. One of Claire's aunts smiled tightly and said, "You must feel quite accomplished. Marrying up isn't easy." I laughed politely, pretending it didn't sting. As wedding planning began, I noticed the subtle shift. Claire's parents took control of every detail: venue, guest list, even color themes. I told myself it was their way of showing love, but deep down, I could feel the imbalance growing. They treated me like a participant, not a partner. When I offered to help with expenses, her father chuckled and said, "That's sweet. But this isn't exactly something you can afford, is it?" The words hit harder than I let show. Later that night, I vented to Claire. She wrapped her arms around me and said softly, "They just don't know you like I do. Once they see how genuine you are, they'll come around." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that love or love could bridge that invisible gap between their world and mine. But something had already shifted. The warmth of family gatherings now carried a chill. Conversations turned transactional. Smiles felt rehearsed. And as the wedding day inched closer, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere behind all the congratulations, her parents were planning something I wouldn't see coming. And I was right. A few weeks before the wedding, Claire's father called me and said, "We should have a quick family meeting just to finalize a few things before the big day." His tone was polite but clipped, like he was talking to an employee, not a future son-in-law. I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was about logistics, maybe something to do with the guest list or payments. When I arrived at their home, the lawyer was already seated in the living room, papers neatly stacked on the table. Claire sat beside her mother, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, avoiding eye contact. Her father gestured toward the documents and said, "This is standard procedure. Just something we'd like you to sign before the wedding." I reached for the papers, smiling nervously. But as I started reading, my stomach sank. It was a prenup, but not just any prenup. It was one-sided, almost cruel. Everything Claire owned or ever would own stayed entirely hers. Anything I earned after marriage could be jointly utilized, but in the event of a divorce, I would get nothing. Even future assets or properties acquired together would revert to her family's name. I looked up, stunned. "This can't be serious," I said quietly. Her father leaned back, calm and collected. "Of course it is. You understand? We have to protect our daughter's interests. Surely a man like you, coming from a modest background, would appreciate the need for boundaries." I turned to Claire, desperate for her to say something, anything. She finally spoke, her voice trembling. "It's just a formality, babe. My parents insist on it for everyone in the family. It doesn't mean anything." But it did. It meant everything. It meant they didn't trust me, and worse, she wasn't willing to stand up for me. I felt humiliated sitting there, a guest in their golden cage, realizing I was just another man being measured. Not loved, I left that meeting without signing a thing, but with a cold pit forming in my chest. Something told me this wasn't over, and I had no idea how ugly it was about to get. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every word, every look, every fake smile at that table. The next morning, I drove to Claire's apartment, determined to talk it through calmly. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted, like she'd been crying. For a second, I thought maybe she regretted it all. "Claire," I said quietly, "I can't sign something like that. It's not about money. It's about what it says. It says, you don't trust me." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's not me. It's them. You know how my parents are? It's just to make them feel secure. Once we're married, it won't matter." I shook my head. "It already matters. You didn't defend me, Claire. You sat there while they made me feel like I was what? Some gold digger trying to marry up." Her expression hardened. "You're blowing this out of proportion. If you really loved me, you'd do this one thing to keep the peace." That line cut deep. If you really loved me? The kind of emotional trap that makes you question your own integrity? I stared at her, trying to find the woman I fell in love with, the one who laughed at my dumb jokes and talked about partnership. But all I saw was someone torn between love and loyalty to her family. In choosing them, a few days later, her father called me directly. No pleasantries this time. "You have until Friday to sign," he said bluntly. "If you don't, the wedding's off. Simple as that." I remember standing in my office holding the phone, my coworkers' chatter fading into static around me. That was the first time I realized they didn't see me as a man worthy of their daughter. They saw me as a threat to their wealth. That weekend, I stared at the unsigned papers sitting on my kitchen counter. I loved Claire, but signing them felt like betraying myself. Yet not signing meant losing her, and that's when I made a decision that would change everything. Friday came faster than I expected. Those unsigned papers sat on my kitchen table like a storm cloud, and every time I looked at them, I felt the same knot tighten in my chest. That morning, Claire texted, "Please, can we just talk before you make a decision?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I arrived at her place, she was pacing, phone in hand. "My dad's serious, you know," she said, eyes darting toward me. "He'll cancel everything if you don't sign." "I'm not signing something that strips me of my dignity," I replied firmly. "I'm not marrying into a contract, Claire. I'm marrying you." Her tone sharpened. "Why are you making this about pride? It's a legal formality. Everyone in my family does it." "Yeah," I said bitterly. "Does everyone in your family also get treated like they're disposable?" The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time, I saw the wall between us, the invisible class divide I'd been pretending didn't exist. She finally said, "Maybe you're just not used to how people with real money protect themselves." That line broke something inside me. I left before she could say another word. I didn't yell, didn't slam the door. I just walked out, got in my car, and sat there for a long time, hands trembling on the steering wheel. That night, I called my lawyer a family friend, and explained the situation. He didn't sugarcoat it. Don't sign, man. This isn't a prenup, it's financial suicide. They're setting you up to lose before the marriage even starts. I spent the next few days in silence, alternating between heartbreak and rage. I had given everything love, time, loyalty, and they gave me conditions. I realized it wasn't just about a signature. It was about what they thought I was worth. And then came the message that would turn everything upside down. One that showed this prenup wasn't just for me. It was a pattern. And Claire wasn't the first man they'd done this to. It started with a phone call from an old college friend who worked in finance. He'd heard about my engagement through mutual acquaintances and asked casually, "Hey, isn't your fiancée's last name Whitmore?" When I confirmed, he let out a small sigh. "Man, I think you should know something." He told me that 2 years earlier, Claire had been engaged to someone else, a guy named Derek. He was from a respectable family, successful in his own right, but not as wealthy as hers. Derek had backed out suddenly, no explanation given. My friend's firm had handled part of a confidential settlement around that time. "I can't say details," he added carefully, "but it involved a prenup, one that was nearly identical to the one you mentioned." He refused to sign, and they paid him to walk away quietly. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe as I listened. This wasn't about trust, it was a pattern. Her parents didn't believe in love. They believed in control. I sat there staring at my phone, realizing that I wasn't just marrying Claire, I was about to step into a family that viewed every relationship like a transaction. That night, I confronted her. "Why didn't you tell me about Derek?" I asked. Her face went pale. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter." "Why keep it a secret?" She hesitated before whispering, "Because it wasn't relevant." "He wasn't you, but it is relevant," I snapped. "You're repeating the same thing. Your parents think every man in your life wants their money. Do you even hear how insulting that is?" She started crying, saying, "You're twisting it. My parents just want to protect me." I looked at her, really looked tanned, realized she wasn't lying. She truly believed this was normal. That love came with fine print. I left her apartment that night with a sinking feeling. The engagement wasn't just in danger, it was already over. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness. It was like my body had processed all the shock, all the heartbreak, and replaced it with something colder clarity. I brewed a cup of coffee and stared at the wedding binder Claire had left at my place. Filled with color palettes, vendor lists, and smiling engagement photos. It looked like a fairy tale built on lies. I didn't text her. I didn't call. Instead, I went through every line of the prenup again, this time not with emotion, but with logic. The clauses were so aggressive that even joint purchases, like a house or car, would revert to her family's ownership. My lawyer was right. It wasn't protection. It was a trap. That was when I decided I wouldn't sign. I wouldn't marry her. But I wasn't going to storm out or beg for understanding. I was going to walk away with dignity, quietly, cleanly. Over the next few days, started dismantling the life we'd built. I called the vendors that were under my name: photographer, honeymoon agency, catering depositant, canceled them. Every polite "Are you sure?" over the phone felt like confirmation that I was doing the right thing. When her mom called to check in, her tone was syrupy, but laced with smugness. "Have you come to your senses yet?" she asked. I smiled through the phone. "Actually, yes," I said evenly. "I've made a decision." She seemed pleased until I added, "You'll all hear it soon enough." I started packing that night. The suit I'd bought for the wedding, the ring receipts, the travel plans, all neatly stacked in a drawer. And then I paused over one thing: the honeymoon tickets. 2 first-class seats to Santorini, paid for in full. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. I didn't know it yet, but that ticket would become my quiet revenge. And when the day came, they'd all find out exactly what I meant by my decision. 2 days before the wedding, I asked Claire and her family to meet me at their house. Her father sounded almost smug on the phone, thinking I'd finally come around. When I arrived, they were already waiting, her parents on the couch, Claire sitting tensely between them. The same lawyer from before was there too, pen in hand, ready to finalize everything. Her father smiled like a man closing a business deal. "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable," he said. I sat down, calm but steady. "Actually," I replied, "I came here to tell you I won't be signing the prenup. And there won't be a wedding." The room went silent. Then, like a spark igniting gasoline, chaos erupted. Claire's mother gasped dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. Her father's expression hardened. "You're making a huge mistake," he snapped. "You'll regret this for the rest of your life. I'd rather regret walking away than spend my life proving I'm not a thief," he said. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but there was anger behind them. "So that's it? You're just leaving?" "I wanted a marriage, not a merger," I said quietly. "I wanted love built on trust, not signatures." Her father stood, pointing a finger at me. "Men like you never know what's good for them. You'll never find someone like our daughter again." I met his glare. "You're right. I hope I don't." I placed the ring box on the table, hers, shining under the chandelier's glow, walked out. Claire didn't follow. No one did. The air outside was cold, but it felt cleaner than anything inside that house. As I got in my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "You're throwing away something real." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. She was right, I was throwing something away. But it wasn't love. It was everything that had been choking me, and while they were preparing for a wedding that would never happen, I was already planning something else, the morning after I called everything off. My phone exploded with messages, texts, missed calls, and even voicemails from mutual friends. Some were supportive, but others were brutal. "Did you really dump her over money?" one said. "Her parents are telling everyone you were after their wealth." Another read, "Dude, you could have just signed and lived easy." By noon, Claire's family had already rewritten the narrative. According to them, I was the greedy fiancé who bailed when I didn't get what I wanted. Her father even posted some veiled comment online about character revealing itself under pressure. It spread fast in our small circle. Suddenly, I was the villain. I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by boxers, half forgotten. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. Every time I picked up my phone, I saw another notification, another piece of gossip twisting the truth. For the first time, the silence felt suffocating. That night, I went out for a walk, just to breathe. Rain had started to fall, soft at first, then harder. I walked aimlessly through the city, my jacket soaked, shoes heavy. I kept replaying everything: her laughter, her eyes that first night we met. How could something that felt so real end in humiliation? I found myself sitting on a park bench, rain dripping from my hair. I'd lost my fiancée, my reputation, and the future I'd imagined. And for what? Integrity? Pride? It didn't feel noble anymore. It just felt lonely. I stared at my reflection in a puddle, the streetlights warping my face. That was the lowest point of my life. For a moment, I even wondered if I should have just signed, kept the peace, swallowed my pride like everyone expected me to. But deep down, a quieter voice whispered, "No, you did the right thing." And though I didn't know it then, that rock bottom would become the foundation for my comeback, the kind that would make every one of them wish they hadn't underestimated me. A week after the canceled wedding, I woke up to an email reminder from the travel agency: "Your honeymoon trip to Santorini departure in 48 hours. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the delete button. Then, something inside me shifted. Why should I be the one hiding in shame while they carried on like nothing happened? I paid for that trip. It was mine, so I made a decision. I'd go alone. When I landed in Greece, the sun hit my face like a cleansing fire. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing down on me. The sea stretched endlessly, blue and alive, and the air smelled of salt and possibility. I checked into the ocean view villa I'd booked months ago and just stood there for a minute, letting the silence wash over me. No arguments, no lawyers, no ultimatums. Just peace. That first evening, I took a photo of the sunset, the kind of breathtaking scene Claire used to dream about, and posted it on Instagram with a simple caption: "Honeymoon, party of one." It was petty maybe, but it felt damn good. The post started gaining traction, likes, comments, shares. People thought it was bold, funny, even empowering. The next day, I met a group of travelers at a local cafe, 2 women from Spain, 1 from Australia, and another solo traveler from Italy. They were kind, curious, free-spirited. We shared stories, laughter, and too many glasses of wine. I snapped a photo with them and posted it with another caption: "When life gives you lemons, make new friends in Santorini." That post went viral overnight, and with every new picture, every smile under that golden island sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: freedom. The story was no longer about what I'd lost. It was about what I'd reclaimed. But back home, not everyone found it inspiring, especially Claire. By the 3rd day of my trip, my phone was blowing up again, but this time for a completely different reason. My posts had spread beyond my circle. A travel blogger shared one of my photos, calling it the ultimate post-breakup power move. Comments poured in by the hundreds, people cheering me on, laughing at the irony, and praising the confidence it took to turn a canceled wedding into a solo honeymoon. Adventure. But mixed in with the love were messages from Claire. The first was calm: "Can you please stop posting? You're humiliating me." Then came another: "You're being childish. My parents are furious." Finally, one that cut colder than I expected: "You're proving exactly why my family never trusted you." I stared at that last message for a long time before replying. "If you think dignity is immaturity, then we were never on the same page." Hit send and turned my phone face down. That night, I met another traveler, Sophia, a photographer from Germany who'd been documenting solo journeys around the world. She asked about my story, and I told her everything, no bitterness, just the truth. When I finished, she smiled softly and said, "Then your story isn't about loss. It's about freedom." The next morning, she tagged me in one of her posts, just a picture of me staring at the sea, captioned, "Some people escape. Others evolve." It blew up. Suddenly, strangers from all over were commenting, "This guy's a legend. That's how you take your power back. He dodged a bullet with that family." Claire's narrative collapsed under the weight of public opinion. Her family went silent. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the underdog anymore. Felt like someone who had survived something heavy and walked out stronger. Still, beneath all the noise and validation, a quiet thought lingered. The posts weren't about revenge anymore. They were about closure. And when I finally posted the last photo of the trip, it wasn't to get even. It was to let go. When I returned home, everything felt different. The apartment was quiet, stripped of her presence, but it didn't ache the way I thought it would. It felt peaceful, like walking into a space that finally belonged to me again. The suitcase sat in the corner, still dusted with Santorini sand. A small reminder that sometimes freedom comes disguised as heartbreak. The viral posts had run their course. I stopped checking the notifications after a while. It wasn't about the internet anymore. It was about what came next. I started focusing on work again, hitting the gym, catching up with old friends I'd drifted from. One evening, over coffee, a buddy said, "Man, I can't believe you turned that mess into a movement." I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. Dozens of people had messaged me privately saying my story gave them the courage to walk away from toxic relationships and family manipulation. That, more than anything, made it worth it. A few months later, I heard Claire had moved abroad. Someone mentioned her family was still upset about the public embarrassment, but I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance. She'd made her choices. And so had I one evening. I went through my old photos and stopped at the one from our engagement, the one where we looked like the perfect couple. I didn't feel pain anymore, just gratitude. Because that man in the picture, smiling, naive, desperate to prove he was enough, had finally learned that real love doesn't demand you shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort. I deleted the photo. Then I poured a drink, sat on my balcony, and watched the sunset burn gold over the city's skyline. It reminded me of Santorini, of freedom, of endings that feel like beginnings. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I was free. Sometimes walking away isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-respect.